The empire of Zorath was vast, stretching across planets, moons, and floating cities in the sky. At the heart of it all was the Alpha King, a proud and strong ruler whose presence alone inspired loyalty and fear. But even kings, no matter how powerful, could face troubles that money and strength could not solve. His greatest worry now was his only cub, Cairo, who had fallen mysteriously ill. Cairo's illness came suddenly. One morning, he had been running through the royal gardens, laughing and chasing the fluttering sky butterflies. By evening, he could barely breathe. His eyes were dull, and his normally bright fur had lost its shine. The royal healers tried their usual methods, herbs, energy treatments, and healing machines, but nothing worked. Panic grew in the palace. The Alpha King, strong and fearless in war, now felt helpless. He had ruled for decades, faced invasions, and solved impossible disputes. Yet the weakness of his cub left him powerless. Every healer in the empire was called to the palace. Not one, not two, but 1,000 of the finest healers arrived, traveling from the farthest corners of the galaxy. They brought glowing crystals, strange devices, and books filled with forgotten knowledge. Each healer approached Cairo with confidence. Some were tall and stern, others were calm and gentle. They examined the cub's body, measured his energy, and murmured ancient chants. Some even combined magic with technology, hoping to create a cure stronger than any before. But hours passed. Cairo grew weaker. The Alpha King's brow furrowed in worry. "This cannot be," the king shouted. "All of you are the best healers in the galaxy. How can my son still suffer?" The head healer, an old man with silver hair and robes decorated with rare stones, bowed low. "Your Majesty, we have tried everything known to healers. His illness is strange. We cannot cure him." The king's anger flared, but it was mixed with fear. He looked at his son lying on the soft golden bed, his small chest rising and falling slowly. Every moment Cairo stayed sick felt like an eternity. Days passed, and still the healers failed. The court whispered in secret corners. Rumors began spreading that the cub might not survive. Advisors suggested sending Cairo to distant planets for experimental treatments, but the king rejected these ideas. He wanted the child safe here in his palace, where he could watch over him, far from the glittering palace. In a small, dusty village on the edge of the empire lived a poor Omega girl named Lyra. Her home was a small hut made of clay and leaves. She did not own much, but she had a gift. Lyra could understand the healing power of nature. She knew which herbs could soothe fever, which plants could calm pain, and how a gentle touch could restore energy. Lyra lived quietly, helping sick villagers and injured animals. No one in the capital knew of her existence. Yet across the empire, news of Cairo's illness reached her. She heard that the finest healers had failed and that the child's life was in danger. Something stirred inside her, a mixture of fear, hope, and determination. "I must help him," she whispered to herself. "I may not be rich or powerful, but I can try." She packed her small bag with herbs, oils, and water, and started her journey to the capital. The path was long and dangerous, filled with wild creatures and steep cliffs, but Lyra did not turn back. She thought only of Cairo, the child who had no choice but to suffer. When she arrived at the palace, the guards laughed at her. "And what is this?" one said, pointing at her worn bag. "A poor Omega girl thinks she can heal the Alpha's son." Lyra did not reply. She bowed respectfully. "I only wish to try," she said softly. Her voice had no arrogance, only kindness. The court was filled with anger and amusement. The king himself watched silently, curious. He had seen many strange things in his life, but he had never imagined a poor girl from a distant village standing in his throne room, offering to heal his son. After a long silence, the king finally spoke. "Very well. You may approach my cub, but if you fail, you leave this palace immediately." Lyra nodded and followed the guards to Cairo's chamber. The room was grand, filled with golden curtains and glowing lanterns, yet the cub's bed was the only place that mattered. She knelt beside him, noticing how pale he looked, how faint his breathing was. He was small, fragile, yet full of life waiting to return. Unlike the healers who used complicated machines and chants, Lyra began with simple steps. She placed her hands gently on Cairo's chest and closed her eyes, feeling his pain. She whispered calming words, soft and soothing. She crushed herbs between her fingers and let their aroma fill the room, not for magic, but for comfort. The cub stirred slightly. Lyra smiled softly. "Shh, it's okay. You're safe now," she murmured. Her presence alone seemed to calm him. The head healer watched her skeptically. "This is foolish," he muttered to another healer. "She cannot do what we could not." But Lyra did not speak to them. She focused only on Cairo. She applied a simple herbal paste to his skin, rubbed gently and massaged the areas where he felt pain. Her hands moved carefully as if guided by something deeper than knowledge alone. Hours passed. The palace was silent, filled with tense anticipation. Slowly, Cairo's breathing grew steadier. His eyes, dull and weak before, now began to sparkle faintly. The king, standing in the doorway, felt his heart skip a beat. He could not believe his eyes. The other healers were shocked. "How?" one whispered. "She has no technology, no advanced methods. And yet the cub responds." Lyra smiled, though her hands never left Cairo. "Sometimes," she said softly, "healing comes from understanding, not power. From patience, not pride. From love, not status." Cairo's tiny hand moved, reaching for her. He let out a small, happy sound. Lyra laughed softly, a sound full of relief and warmth. For the first time in days, the palace felt alive again. The Alpha King's heart swelled with gratitude. He had expected nothing from this girl, yet here she was, performing a miracle he could not have imagined. He realized something important. True strength and skill are not measured by title or wealth, but by heart and courage. The night ended with Cairo resting peacefully, his fever gone, his energy returning. Lyra stayed by his side, not for reward, but because she cared. The king knew that he had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would change the way he saw the world forever. Even among the glittering palaces, powerful machines, and thousands of elite healers, a poor girl from the edge of the empire had achieved what no one else could. And in that moment, Lyra understood something too. It was not her skill alone, but her willingness to act when others had given up. That made the difference. The palace would never forget this night. The healers would remember that humility and kindness can surpass the greatest knowledge, and the Alpha King would never doubt the power of the heart, no matter how small its owner. But outside the walls, a storm was gathering. Rumors of the girl's power spread quickly across the empire. Some would admire her, but others might feel threatened. Lyra knew her journey had just begun. Her role in the palace, and perhaps in the fate of the empire, was far from over. Yet she remained calm, focused only on one thing: helping those in need, one life at a time. And for the first time, the Alpha King felt hope. Not just for his cub, but for the future of his kingdom, knowing that even the smallest and humblest among them could achieve greatness. The morning after Cairo's miraculous recovery, the palace was alive with whispers and excitement. Courtiers hurried through golden halls, discussing the girl who had healed the Alpha King's cub where 1,000 elite healers had failed. Lyra, still humble and quiet, remained by Cairo's side, ensuring he rested peacefully. The Alpha King entered the room, his strong presence commanding attention, yet his expression was softer than usual. "Lyra," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "you have done what none of our greatest healers could. Tell me, how did you know what to do?" Lyra looked up at him with calm eyes. "Your Majesty, I only listened. I watched the cub, felt his pain, and tried to help him in a way that was gentle. I did not rely on power or machines. I only tried to understand him." The king nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. Understanding. That is something many of us have forgotten. His gaze softened as he looked at his son, now smiling and sitting up, full of energy. Cairo reached out to the girl, hugging her small hand. "Thank you," he said in his innocent, childlike voice. The court, meanwhile, was divided. Some nobles were amazed and grateful. They began to whisper about how even a humble girl could outperform the finest experts. Others were suspicious, uncomfortable with a poor Omega being seen as more capable than the elite. They feared she might gain influence over the king. The head healer, still pale from shock, approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, we do not understand. How can a simple girl succeed where we could not? Is her method real?" The king's voice was firm. "It is real. She has shown courage, skill, and compassion. That is all that matters. Knowledge without heart is nothing." News of Lyra's success spread quickly beyond the palace. Merchants, travelers, and even other rulers across the galaxy spoke of the girl who healed the Alpha King's cub. Many sent messages and gifts, hoping to learn from her or to gain favor. Yet Lyra remained humble. returning each gift with a polite smile. She did not seek recognition or reward. Her only concern was helping those in need. Days passed and Cairo recovered fully. He ran through the royal gardens once more, laughing as he had before his illness. The Alpha King watched his son, gratitude shining in his eyes. He knew that without Lyra, Cairo might not have survived. The experience also taught him a lesson he would never forget. True strength lies not in status, power or wealth, but in courage, empathy, and determination. The king invited Lyra to stay in the palace, offering her a comfortable room, food, and protection. Lyra accepted not because of luxury, but because it gave her the chance to help more people. She began studying the palace archives, learning about medicines, herbs, and healing techniques from across the empire. But she combined these lessons with her own natural methods, creating new ways to help others. Some healers, who had once mocked her, began to respect her. They saw that her humble approach, patience, and understanding could achieve what their machines and rituals could not. Slowly, the palace's medical practices began to change. The healers started listening more, observing patients, and learning from Lyra's methods. Even Cairo, now strong and playful, formed a special bond with Lyra. He followed her around, curious about the herbs and plants she used. "Teach me," he would say. "I want to help people too." Lyra laughed and nodded, happy to share her knowledge. But not all was peaceful. Some nobles whispered that a poor girl gaining influence could threaten their position. They tried to turn the king against her, suggesting that she might be ambitious, seeking control. Yet the king, wise and experienced, would not be fooled. He had seen the truth of her character. Lyra's actions were pure and selfless, and he trusted her completely. One day, a young prince from a neighboring kingdom arrived, seeking Lyra's help for his ailing sister. The journey to the palace had been long and dangerous, but Lyra did not hesitate. She followed the prince to his city, examined the girl carefully, and prepared her simple remedies. Within hours, the girl's strength returned, her pale cheeks brightened, and her fever broke. The prince was amazed. Word of Lyra's skill spread even further. The Alpha King received messages from rulers across galaxies, asking her to help their people. Yet, despite the fame and respect she was gaining, Lyra remained humble. She insisted that her mission was to help anyone in need, not to gain power or wealth. Through all this, the Alpha King observed her closely. He realized that Lyra represented something rare, the combination of humility, courage, and extraordinary skill. He began consulting her on decisions affecting his empire, not because of her status, but because of her insight and wisdom. The palace itself began to change. Lyra's influence inspired others to act with kindness and patience. The healers learned that listening to their patients and observing carefully was as important as any spell or machine. Even the king's advisors became more thoughtful in their decisions, valuing understanding and empathy. Cairo, now healthy and full of energy, never forgot how Lyra saved him. He admired her bravery and wanted to grow up to be like her, caring, patient, and wise. He spent hours by her side, learning about herbs, healing, and the importance of helping others. The king watched this, feeling proud not only of his son's recovery but also of the example Lyra provided. As months passed, Lyra became known as the healer of the empire. Her reputation was not built on wealth or status, but on results, compassion, and courage. She helped thousands, traveling between cities and planets, teaching others her methods and showing that even the simplest, humblest individuals could achieve greatness. Despite all the attention, Lyra never changed. She remained a girl from a small village with simple values and a kind heart. She knew that her abilities were gifts meant to help others, not to bring her glory. And those who worked with her learned a powerful lesson. Greatness does not always come from power, rank, or technology, but from the heart and the courage to act when it matters most. The Alpha King often reflected on how a single act of compassion could transform an empire. The cub's illness had brought fear and despair, yet it also revealed truth, courage, and hope. Through Lyra, he learned that even the humblest beings could become heroes. One evening, as the sun set over the Golden Palace, Cairo sat beside Lyra in the gardens. "You saved me," he said softly. "Will you always be here to help me?" Lyra smiled, placing her hand on his small shoulder. "I will always help those in need, Cairo, and I will help you grow strong, wise, and kind so one day you can help others too." The Alpha King watched from a distance, his heart full. His cub was healthy, the empire had hope, And a humble girl had shown them all that true greatness comes not from status or power, but from courage, empathy, and the willingness to act when others cannot. And so, Lyra continued her journey, touching lives wherever she went. Her story spread across the stars, inspiring others to act with kindness, bravery, and humility. Even among the greatest empires and the most powerful rulers, it was clear. A single person with a pure heart could change the world. The Empire of Zorath would never forget the day a poor Omega girl healed the Alpha King's cub. Her name became a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary power of empathy, a reminder that even in a galaxy of advanced technology and mighty rulers, the heart was the greatest force of all.